Electricast. When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today's guest is Stephanie Jones. Stephanie is a time management and productivity coach and the founder of both the Growth Room and the Wealth Building Room, results-driven spaces designed to help women build profitable businesses without burnout. Known for her bold, no-fluff approach, she helps women cut through the noise, reclaim their time, and create businesses that actually make money. After leading a high-control religious environment and coming out as a lesbian at 27, Stephanie rebuilt her life and identity from the ground up. That experience now fuels her work. She helps women break free from outdated expectations, use their voice, and step fully into their power as leaders, earners, and decision makers. First of all, Stephanie, I'm so happy that you're here. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I've been really looking forward to having you on and for this conversation with me today, because I truly feel like you embody what this Influence with Integrity series is all about, just because of all of the good things that you're doing in the world. And so before we talk about what you've built, I want to talk about who you became in order to build it. So first of all, you left a high control religious environment and you then came out as a lesbian at the tender age of 27. And that's not just a personal milestone. That's a complete reconstruction of identity, belief, and belonging. What was that season of your life like? And how did rebuilding yourself from the ground up become the foundation for everything that you now teach other women about stepping into their own power?
Oh, yeah. So, I was really, really fortunate that at that time, I was in a financial position to be able to really take a year and grieve my old identity. So I didn't exactly quote unquote come out. I was outed. And so I had 3 kids under the age of 8, and I had gone through a divorce at 22 and left the religion at 22, but I hadn't actually excommunicated myself. So I was still in close contact with my family and was president of the PTA and was still very involved in community things and the kids' school and all of that. And this is in the late 90s. And so my youngest son's father actually outed me whenever I said, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. He went and outed me to the school and outed me to my family. And so I lost, pretty much overnight, my entire support system. So my family cut me off. I was asked to step down from the PTA. I was not allowed to volunteer in the school classroom anymore. And I really just spent the majority of that year just going down by the river and journaling and grieving and just trying to figure out who I was. And it wasn't until my oldest son came home one day from school, I was freaking out and hid under the table. And I was like, what is going on? And he was like, you're going to be arrested. It's illegal to be gay. And I was like, it's not. It's not illegal to be gay. And it was that moment that I was like, this whole scenario is ridiculous. I have not changed as a person. The person I am that everybody thought they liked and loved is still the same person. And I'm trying to fit into this mold of expectations. And so that was really kind of the beginning of me just saying, this is who I am and accept it or don't. And just choosing at that moment to step more into my authentic voice and teach my kids that you can go down a different path and it's okay, even though sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't imagine with your son coming home and being terrified. Because as a young person, we're very impressionable. And of course,
Yeah.
that's not true what he heard, but of course, it gets sensationalized. And especially in the community that grew up in, people tend to like even maybe embellish it a little bit more. And so, of course, the young people are really affected by it, but that your son was terrified that something was going to happen and he wanted to hide away from the world. He just didn't even want to be seen. It was like he was trying to hide, like shrink, like we can't see you. And that just breaks my heart to even know that that happened. So, but I mean, that's just the world we live in. People just can say things, whatever they feel. And a lot of it's just that ignorance and not even really realizing who they're affecting by the words that they're saying?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it was that moment that kind of broke everything open where I was like, this is this is asinine, right? Like this is absolutely ridiculous that I'm trying to hide who I am from my kids or from the world because of these weird constructs that nobody even has any reason to stand on, right? Like there was no reason. It was just that it was a time period and we've gotten better. We're not there yet, but it's gotten better. And it's just that thing of like, all people are different and just accept and embrace each other's differences. And that was really the thing that came through for me and really the way that I was able to take that experience and really instill that in my children, which I feel like is at least making the world a slightly better place, right? So it's it's that thing of like, how do you take that pain and that grief and that shame and turn it into something that's a teaching moment. And had he not come home and said that, I don't know that I would have had that. I mean, maybe at some point, but it snapped me out of that spiral. And I was like, no, this is not going to affect them I mean, obviously it affects them in a negative way to some extent, but the least impact negative that I could have and could share with them, the better. So
Yeah. 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 No, well, yeah, I'm so happy that you actually had that thought process, but maybe a lot of other people might not have and could have just shrunk and said,
yeah.
run away from it and try to hide and maybe even try to hide who they are because of how society is. That things are changing, but that's it's going to take it's like baby steps, right? With anything. But this month, of course, we're exploring what it means to influence with integrity, and at the heart of your work is this idea of that women need to use their voices unapologetically and to take up space without permission. So with that, what do you find gets in the way of women doing that? And what does it actually look like when a woman finally stops shrinking and she starts to lead with her full, unfiltered voice?
Yeah, so I really feel strongly about that from being in the restaurant industry, right? I was in corporate restaurant management for a long time, and I saw there's so many things that happen in corporate environments. I mean, you come from the law world, right? And so it's very male driven and it's very sexist and racist and misogynist and ageist and all of the things. And I saw these very, very young girls just being okay with comments that were being made to them. And I was like, you don't have to be okay with that. It's not an acceptable practice. And so I really, for me, it is women saying, especially those of us that are older, saying, this is no longer acceptable and paving that way to make it easier for that younger generation to use her voice. And it's hard, right? It's hard. You're oftentimes the outcast. I was the only female manager on a team of 10. And I've been told my whole life, like, the world doesn't think like you. And I just don't care. Like, I'm so passionate about equality, and I always have been, which is very odd because I didn't really honestly grow up that way. And it's just always been ingrained in me from birth as a child. And so it's something that I've always chosen to stand up for. And I am okay. And I attribute a lot of this to my father. My father always reinforced in me, your body is your own, your voice is your own. You can do anything a man can do. He very much put a lot of really strong skill sets into me and a lot of confidence. So even when him and I would butt heads over things that I would say, there was also this part where it was like, "But you told me, right?" And then he would, like, you see that little glimmer of proudness, right? Like, "Oh, I did." And it's like, so it's easier when you have that kind of upbringing or have that kind of background, and when you know that you can go home and it's a safe space, and that you're not going to, be reprimanded for standing up for yourself or speaking your voice or not being sexually harassed or not being overlooked for a promotion or whatever. But it's also still hard in those moments. And I acknowledge that it's hard. And I acknowledge that for a lot of women, and especially the younger we are, we just want to do a good job. We just want to prove ourselves. It's the comment wasn't that big of a deal. You know, the touching wasn't that big of a deal, but it is a big deal. And until we really say no more and we step into our own power and we take up space in rooms, that shift doesn't happen, in my opinion. And so the shift, I believe, needs to happen so that there is more equality in the world. And I mean, 50% of our population is women. We're 50% of the population. This isn't there's 20 of us and billions of men. We're 50% of the population, and we are still making less money, and we're still not getting promoted as fast, and all of these things. And so the only way that's going to change is for us to stand up and say enough.
Yeah, I agree. It just feels like it's still that male dominated way of thinking that still runs the world. And I mean, look at how hard it was to even just to try to even elect a female president for the US. Not that I want to talk politics, but I mean, it's really hard because
Yep.
people say they're ready, but then are they ready? And then they get picky about who it's going to be. And it's like there's not that same standard when it
Right.
comes to who they allow for the male counterparts to go into political office. So I really feel like there's just it just we need to have we need to allow our voices to be heard. And that's one of the things I want to ask you, like a follow-up to that is how do you help? Because I know this is one thing I think is so important is it's not just about our voices being heard, but it's really about having that purpose behind what we're saying so that it's not just simply noise that is because again it's hard for women a lot of the time to get taken seriously. Sometimes I find, and I think this is why I think a lot of women get that the label of being difficult or angry or aggressive because they're doing the same thing as men are, but it's just completely the way people look at a woman who might feel she's being assertive, whereas other people would say, no, she's being aggressive. So, how do we as women, just from your perspective, be able to use our voice with purpose without us just simply making that noise or without us having to try to be something that we're not in order to get our purpose or our thoughts heard? Like, you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I do. So there's a really great book, and I don't remember the author off the top of my head, but it's called, I don't know if you can swear on here, so I'll just use the initial. I all know what I'm talking about. It's called F No. And it's written by an attorney. And she said she was sitting at this table of all of her colleagues, and something was coming up, like a holiday party or a birthday or something along that line, right? And everybody looked at her and said, "You're fine planning that, right?" And she was like, "No, I have as much of a caseload as everybody else at this table. I'll be part of a committee, but I'm not going to take it all on." And they were so surprised by that because that's our role, right? Like it's quote unquote, we are the ones that are the nurturers and the planners and the party people. And it's like, no, this is a serious woman in a serious job sitting at a table full of serious people. And just because of her gender, she's expected to take on this extra thing, no extra pay, no extra time, no less caseload, right? And do this frivolous thing that, yeah, sure, it's good for morale, but like it's not anything that brings value outside of that, which is, that's a whole different topic. But she was just like, no, if everybody wants to step in, we can do this together. So part of it is, to me, us saying that, right? Us saying, I'm not going to continue to take on those invisible extra pieces and do so in a way that's not angry. And I think that that's where the feminist movement got kind of a bad rap is it was this whole touting of like, first of all, there's no such thing truly as equality in the terms that we think of like all pies are equal, right? Like that doesn't exist. We have different skills and strength sets. So the feminist movement comes along and has this, we want equality, we want equality, we want equality, and we hate men. And men have a place. Men are great human beings also. They're not all bad. Not all women are bad, right? So how do we work together so it's cohesive? But I think that what I see a lot is women, by the time they share their opinion, they're so frustrated that it comes across either as what you said, like really difficult or really, really emotional. Oftentimes there's tears or there's yelling. And it's like, if we can really learn to use our voice prior to that and not let those things creep in. And again, as that older generation, taking those younger generations under our wing and say, that's not acceptable and letting them find their own voice and their own power in it, not swooping in, which I've been guilty of, right? Like swooping in and being like, hey, this isn't okay. You're written up or you're fired or whatever. But letting her have that power and shaping that conversation in a way that feels less volatile, I think is so important. And that's a skill set that I think we're all still having to learn, right? Like none of us are perfect in it in general in communication. But I think that for women to use their voice, it's also just banding together as human beings and seeing each other as a human being, not by gender, race, age, just seeing each other as like, okay, are we equal in our ability? How can we work together to make this stronger? And what do we each bring to the table? And unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. And I think that that's what you brought up with politics is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. We're not there yet. We're we're getting there. I still feel like as much as I know that women are starting to come around to really truly not only say that they support each other, but I'm seeing the actions are starting to match it. There's still a lot of work to be done there. I still feel like there's a lot of women who compete with each other for things. And I just feel like, why compete? We should be able to support each other. Like, yes, a lot of the time I think it's, oh, well, this is the job I have. Like being in the legal industry for as long as I have been, I remember just having those moments where I've always been the one that wants to help. It's just always been in my nature. Don't know where it comes from. I just know that this is who I am. And, I would be doing my job and then there would be times where I wasn't busy. So I'd go around looking to see who needs help because I just didn't want people to feel like you have to be, struggling, that this has to be the only way. And I always felt like, well, that's what I would like. If I was really busy, that I would want someone to come and not necessarily rescue me, but to actually support me if I needed that. And so I remember there were a few times where it kind of ruffled a few feathers. People were worried that I was coming after their job, and it would be like, I don't want your job. I'm just actually really genuinely trying to help. I only want to help you so that you thrive, so that you're not buried in paperwork, so that you're not staying late and have, a whole bunch of things that you have to get done. And now things are thrown out of whack for you in your life. But I have had women actually, their feathers got ruffled. And it really kind of shocked me because I thought, this isn't me coming after your job. If I wanted your job, I probably, who knows, maybe I could have gotten your job, but did I want your job? No. I just
Right.
wanted to truly help you, to support you. And I think, it's just, there's still that. I still see that out there a little bit, but it's getting better. And I wanted to just talk about that for just a second, because I just felt like a lot of women, they talk the talk, but they're not always walking the walk. And I really feel that's why this series to me was so important, because it is about being influential in what you do, but it's with integrity. It's like not all about you. And it's about whatever that you do, you're making sure that, that's your reputation. You are who you are. And so you want to make sure that what you do, it comes back to you in a way that if someone asks, who's Stephanie Jones? Like, what do you know about her? What do you know about her business? Have you worked with her before? How does she think? just things like that. And people are going to be able to say, well, this is what I know better. This is what I like better. These are the things that she does. This is her business. And she really has that integral part of her business that she truly wants the women who come into her community to thrive. And we're going to get to that in a little bit, but you truly do. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I felt there is that integrity there. And to me, integrity is huge. Like, it's one of my core values. And so I really felt like I just wanted to talk about that. So one of the things I know, women get stuck in their businesses, maybe even in their personal lives at times, not for a lack of strategy, especially in business, not for a lack of strategy, but the weight of expectations that get placed upon them by other people. I've seen posts around social media, people getting, my caseload is this heavy, is this normal? Or what you were saying, looking at the woman in the boardroom saying, you're planning that, right? It's like there's this expectation. We just talked a little bit about it, but from what you witnessed and the women that you work with, what do you think is the most, or what is the most common outdated expectations that are holding women back from building the businesses and the lives, like the lifestyles that they actually want? And what does it take to finally release those expectations?
Yeah, that's a magic answer, right? So $1 million question. So I would say the thing that I find, so I mostly work with online women business owners, sometimes brick and mortar. The online business world is very interesting because a lot of women left corporate or left some sort of a job during the pandemic because they were furloughed. And there was a big, I'm just going to call it a lie, sold of it's really easy to come online and make $10,000 overnight, right? But business basics and foundations weren't taught. And so I see a lot of women who are very, very smart and very educated and 99% of the time overly certified who don't understand the basics of actually running a business. So that ends up being a bottleneck. The second bottleneck that I see very often is trying to market yourself in that bro marketing way, right? Like doing business in the way that men do business. And the way men do business works for men, but it doesn't work for women. And the reason for that, and this is also why to go back to, not to like keep touching on politics, but like I use Martha Stewart as an example all the time. Martha Stewart was our first woman billionaire in the US, right? And people will say she's horrible to work for. And I'm like, because she had to be. There wasn't an opportunity to be in your feminine power when Martha Stewart was rising up. There isn't, to my knowledge, currently, even still probably, an opportunity to be in your feminine power in politics. You have to play the game that's being played. And that doesn't typically work for women. So women are more community driven. We are more nurturing by nature. We are more rising together, linking arms, helping each other out, collaborative. And so there's this message in the industry, in my opinion, that is keep all of your secrets to yourself, kind of sort of dangle the carrot to help, but don't really help. Because if I tell you my secret and you take a piece of my pie, I don't have any pie. But that's just not the way it works, right? And so the more we come together and the more we can build community and really drop those idealations of I have to be aggressive, I have to be secretive, I have to only share a little bit, I have to charge this much money to be successful. The more we build stronger communities and tribes of women, and the more we will all rise together, which makes the fabric stronger. And I think we're moving in that direction. I don't think that we've quite gotten there yet. And I think that the thing that will change that the most is, and I love, there's some really big players in the industry right now that are doing this. They're dropping that veil, right? They're saying, you don't have to do it this way. You can do it off of a low ticket offer. You can do it in pockets of time and raise a family and go to the beach and hang out with your partner. You can have time for rest and self-care. You don't have to hustle all the time. There's a season for that. And then there's a season where you can just sit back and enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be because you kept everything to yourself and you built in a silo. So that's the biggest shift that I'm seeing that I love, because that's what I'm really passionate about. Is like we all rise together and there's enough to go around. I even had a client the other day ask me like, well, what if you're doing like this group setting, aren't you worried that somebody's going to steal your clients? And I was like, no, because we're not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. Some people can't stand the way I talk, and that's okay. It's you will attract your right people, and the world just becomes a better place. And there is an abundance. There's an abundance. So
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. And it's like, okay, so if you're worried about someone taking your clients, so I always like to push back and say, do you know how many people are in the world? Do you feel like you have the time and space and the energy to, like, if everyone that you could serve in this industry came to you for you to serve, could you serve them all well? And the answer is no, because we just are not we try to be super women, but we don't have to be. We just have to be the right fit for the right person. And that's really all what it should boil down to is even if someone is in the same space as you are, they can do the same thing as you. They're not going to do it the same way, but they're going to resonate with someone else. And that's okay. As long as that person is getting the support that they need, that's what we should be looking at as women being able to support each other, which is leading me now into what you're doing, because I love it that you have two spaces that you created that are results driven focused, which are the growth room and the wealth building room. Specifically, these have been designed to help women build profitable businesses without burnout. So can you walk us through what each of these spaces is, who they're designed for, and what makes them different from the sea of coaching programs women are already drowning in?
yeah. So last summer, I really got super, super passionate about really helping women entrepreneurs learn business. I have a lot of business background. I'm educated in business. I've done a ton of corporate things, so I understand like P&Ls and all of the things that come with business. And I hadn't really leaned into that because it was just something that was just a skill set that I was like, well, I have that, but it's not really all that valuable, right? So I started doing all this market research, and in that, realized that the way men do business is very different than the way women do business. Women are very permission based. They're waiting for permission to be asked to share an offer or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or right. That's not what this conversation is about. What this conversation is about is I also heard horrific, horrific stories about the coaching practice and the coaching industry, and coaches taking clients' money, ghosting, bait and switch, 10,000 plus programs with templates from 2020 that were outdated, that don't work anymore. And just things that I was like, this is awful because you don't know what you don't know. And in that comes a lot of shame, right? So a lot of women entrepreneurs are sitting sunk in debt, not making any money, no clear roadmap, and feeling defeated and not knowing how to ask for help. And they don't want to, which is appropriate, right? We don't want to call anybody out by name online. And also, we don't know how to ask. We don't feel comfortable sharing our story because we don't want the backlash. And so I was like, how can I make this different? And so I decided to put together what at the time it was one room. And the idea was if we can put together a collective of coaches, experts, and mentors that are vetted, that are going to hold each other accountable, you're not going to come into the space, hire anyone in this room, and they're going to ghost you because there's a group of women holding them accountable. And you can do that for a low cost. And everybody can learn the piece of their business they need to learn at the time that they're learning it. And then we can move into now you have stable income and now you're building true wealth, which changes the world, right? When women have wealth, we change our families, we change our legacies, we change our communities, politics will change, everything will change for the better. It's just been proven. And so I really wanted to strive to do that. And so the growth room is that kind of 0 to 10K. You're not quite making those consistent 10K months. A lot of the women that are in there right now aren't even making the consistent 5. And so it's resource driven, right? It's a lot of how to get from 0 to 1, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and then 5 to 10. It's really a lot of learning, a lot of strategy. And then from that point, it's a lot of foundation building. From that point, the wealth building room is those 10 plus months. So now you're making that money. How do you continue to have your money make money for you? How do you continue to invest? How do you continue to leave a legacy, plan for retirement, plan to become a caretaker of aging parents, right? All of those things. And so that's what the room is really built on. And I really love the women that have come in because I personally know them. I've either worked with them or we've done collaborations. And again, their mission is the same. It's not to come in and just what's in it for me. It's how can I help serve other women? And that's what the space is growing and is being built on. And I just absolutely love what it's becoming.
I love that. And like I said, and I've been saying this for a few years now, that when we do things together, when we actually really truly lean into supporting each other, it's like, I think of it as like we're walking along and we lock arms with each other, and you come up to somebody and you lock arms with that one. If somebody just has to stop for a minute, it's not like we stop and leave them behind. It's like we want us, each of us, to succeed, and we just care about each other. I feel like we're better together when we do that. And so
Yes.
that's why I really love the fact that you built those spaces, because I think, one of the things that's really hard, I think, is because we live in this huge, vast world now because of the internet, it can be really super hard to find the right people, the right community. And it's not, and finding a community for me too is a place where you can actually be seen and not feel like you're going to be judged because you're being seen. Because I think that's the scary part. If you're not doing well, if you are struggling with anything, and you want to voice what's happening, when you find communities that support that, I think that makes a big, huge relief, a huge difference for someone, that they're not just going into a community and they feel like, oh, I really can't be myself. Because that's what I think a lot of people feel when you get online is, how do I really be myself? Because it's hard, because you be yourself and people could judge you for it. And people are going to judge you for it regardless. They're going to judge you regardless. That's on them. That's not on you. And I think it's not necessarily developing a thick skin. It's just saying, you know what? It's really, as the saying goes, it's really none of my business what you think about me, because that's your opinion, if you have an opinion such as that. Yeah. So one of the things I know that what I love about how you describe what you do is that you say turning messy middle entrepreneurs into focused CEOs. And I think that phrase, the messy middle, captures something real and vulnerable and raw for so many women who are working incredibly hard, but they still feel like they are spinning their wheels a lot of the time. Or they could be on the precipice of something and it gets really hard. Like I actually had a conversation with someone recently and I said, oh, it sounds like you're on to something because right now it feels hard. So what does that messy middle actually look like in your opinion? And what are specific things that keep smart, capable women stuck there longer than they need to be?
Yeah, I think to me, the messy middle of what I hear and what I have lived is just doing so many things manual because you don't know, right? Or we think we're not tech savvy, or we aren't sure which platform, or we get stuck in learning. I know that that's my go-to. I will just start learning something new, and I'll watch 10 different videos on the exact same topic to the point that I'm like, I know all this information and I don't need to watch another video, but I still will, right? Because it's procrastinating. And so the messy middle to me is really, you're either starting out, to your point, you're on the precipice of something, but it feels really hard and you don't exactly know how to continue. And you feel a little bit defeated because you're like, I've tried so hard, I've poured all of my heart and soul into this, and it's just not where I want it to be. Or you're pivoting and you're like, okay, now you feel like you burned everything down and you're starting over. The key in that area to me is really, how do we help you set your business up so that you can pull yourself out of it? And that's not always tech. It can be tech. And also, what does success look like to you? Because I think that this is also where we have a tendency as human beings, everybody does it, I think, to look at the outside world and say, that is success and I want that. But what is that thing? Is it an amount of money? Is it a type of lifestyle? Is it you want to have the freedom to go and be able to buy everybody dinner and tip and like over tip and it not be, you don't have to check your bank balance first? What does success look like? And I think if we can really describe that first, then we can say, okay, well, how do we get there and make this business work for you? Because again, we've all like grown up with this whole, you have to go to work for 40 hours, right? Or more. And that's what you do. And then you retire and then you get to go live your life. But the internet has changed that. So we don't have to do it that way anymore. And it's unlearning a lot of those behaviors. And so the messy middle to me and thinking like a CEO is somebody who sits back and looks at the big picture and just reads data, right? They're not there's no feelings involved. It's either something worked or it didn't. They're looking way down the road of where they want to be this Christmas, next Christmas, 5 years down the road, and they're planning their business around that. And so the more we can pull ourselves out and just look at that information, that data is knowledge and we can make better decisions. And again, a lot of it is just pulling ourselves out. And that can be through tech, it can be through changing our offers, it can be in changing the way that we show up for our programs. Maybe it's, I have clients that started podcasting and were like, I hate podcasting. Well, then nobody tells you have to podcast, right? So like, don't do the thing you don't like to do. So there's so many different ways to do things. And it's really figuring out like what works for you in this season of life, because that also can change and probably will.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And you were describing to me like I think a lot of the thing is people get stuck in this having it all. Like, what is having it all is part of like what success is. So having it all could be, I've talked about this many times on the podcast, but really it could just be what lights you up. Like you said, get to the root of what success looks like for you, not what everybody else says it's supposed to look like, not what the model of success has been told for generations, but what does it feel like? What does it look like for you? I think it's envisioning what that looks like. And it might not look like you're making multi-millions. It could be that you're just making a steady six-figure income and you're happy with that. Is that okay? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't have to be multi-six figures just because someone's saying, oh, well, I'm making multi-six figures. I've had multi-six-figure months. That's great because that's what they want. That's what they decided. But that doesn't mean that what we have to all look at as being the successful model, like what that looks like. And I think that for me has been really eye-opening because, I always thought like, well, what does success look like and how does it feel? And I'm living part of my having it all life now because I can live where I'm living now in a beautiful Mexico and I call Mexico home and it's warm here. The sky's blue. It's sunny most of the time, and, this is part of my having it all, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody else's model of success, like as part of their successful, blueprint. But I feel like your mission really is to help women build wealth, not just building wealth on their terms, without sacrificing their health, right? Without sacrificing their relationships, without sacrificing freedom. I think it's an important reframe because a lot of women have been taught that success requires sacrifice, right? But I want to bring it back to you as a woman who is living your life the way you're living your life. You decided long ago, this isn't the model for me, and you wanted to make change. What does sustainable scaling, because let's talk about scaling a business, because now you've been in business for a while. You're helping women build businesses and then going beyond that. What does that look like in practice for you that supports both your growth and your life at the same time?
Yeah, so I'm going to say the first thing for me that 100% pops up is taking care of myself first and having health, right? Working those jobs. I mean, you come from a law firm where you're working ridiculous hours and you're grabbing fast food because you're so tired, or you're eating at, midnight and then you can't go to sleep because you have to unwind and then you're waking back up at 6 a.m. to start it all over again, is so hard on our bodies, right? And then we hit, perimenopause and menopause and our bodies change and our hormones change and all of these things. And we haven't been taught there's just not enough research done on women's health. And so the one thing we do know about women's health is reducing cortisol, right? Reducing stress. Stress is the number one killer of women in the US. So if we can reduce our stress, then we can have all of the health that we want. And in my opinion, health is wealth. Like there's only one of you. So if tomorrow, if tomorrow you were, let's say you grind and you grind and you grind and you're putting in 12, 14-hour days and you finally hit six figures and you're like, okay, now I'm successful, and you continue at that pace and in 3 years you die of a heart attack, are you successful? Or do you pull back a little bit and you say, you know what, I'm going to make a little bit less money and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to play with my kids and I'm going to build these memories with these people that I love and my friends and do things that I love and have a hobby? Is that success? And so that's where I think that, like, for me, it is really about, and I also, this is a big mission for me because I fell off of this during the pandemic. I went to some unhealthy habits and I really had to pull it back. And having the ability to take time to focus on my health and to cook really healthy meals, which I love doing. That's my meditative thing, to meditate, to journal, to have a slow morning. Those are gifts that will never be taken away, right? Like 5 years down the road, you can always make more money. You can always hustle again, but you'll never get back that moment with that beautiful dinner with your husband, or that laughter with your child, or that amazing meal that you got to cook, or going to the doctor and all of your numbers are amazing because you've actually been taking care of yourself. And so that to me is like the number one thing. And I want to say also, like you talked about like the success of people, and it makes me think of the iceberg, right? Like a lot of times I think we compare ourselves to the tip of the iceberg where there's all the stuff underneath. And it makes me think of Gary Vee. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but it was that year that he had somebody follow him around for social media the whole year. And he talked openly about it. His accountant called him and he was like, well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is this was your biggest grossing year ever. And he was like, oh, great, because I really worked hard. Like I really hustled hard this year. He said, the bad news is it's the least amount of money you've ever made. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting, right? So the what we see from the outside as success isn't always success on the inside. And so really, again, going back to that, figuring out what that means for you, for your family, for your future. And I think that changes also depending on your life and your season and where you're at and what you want. Not everybody wants to live in Mexico. Not everybody wants to travel full time. But what is it that you want, and how do you incorporate that joy into your life? Because our happiness is ultimately why we're put here on this planet, and that's what we should be sharing with other people, right? The more happy we are, the more joyful we are, the kinder we are, the better humanity becomes. And that's
Yeah.
zero to do with money.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I always think like, well, how do I want to, not that I want to think about like my deathbed, but when all's said and done and it's that time and if I can just scan back over my life, am I going to scan back and have so much regret of things that I didn't do, people that I didn't invest in getting to know, those relationship building? Because I think that's important too. Like, I want to be able to look back and just say, like, my experiences in life. Like, that's why my husband and I, we've been traveling for 30 years, really. We've been all over the place. We've been living in different places because we just decided that this is what we wanted to do. This is going to be our lifestyle so that we could actually, I'm not waiting till I'm retiring to actually live. I'm going to live as I'm working and building a life, and then whatever that looks like down the road, because you just never know. Nothing is promised to you. Good health isn't promised to you. Tomorrow isn't promised to you. And so I just felt like that was for me, being able to look back and say, wow, like I did all these things. I'm like, wow, I can't even believe that I did these things. And yet there's a lot of people that, they do have regrets. And so that's why I think it's important to really look at, what is your level of success? What does that look like? And again, the relationships are so important. So if family is important to you and you have children and you want to have that strong family union, are you going to invest in that? Or is everything else going to take precedence? Because I think we have to learn that healthy, I don't know if the word is balance, but harmony that really will support, your lifestyle in a way that you can say, yeah, this to me is successful. And like for a very, having that happen to him doesn't, money is not the end all be all. I think a lot of people think, money obviously is important, but I think the most important thing is to know that, yes, money helps us to do the things that we do. But if all you care about is that, and you're going to work yourself into the ground to get money, you're losing out on so much quality of life. And that's kind of like how I look at it. And so maybe some of the things I want that I wanted to have by now haven't happened. I'm okay with that because I feel good. And that is, I think, what I want people to be able to do is like look back, even every year, look back at your past year, every year, and just be able to say, wow, I did a lot of things. Some things I didn't do, some things I started, I didn't finish. I'm okay with that, and be okay and learn from that. So anyways, I know I went off a little bit again because I get very, very passionate about that part of life because I'm about building, like, I guess it's what I call gathering experiences that I can put into my little, I don't know, treasure treasure box that I can look back over time and just say, wow, I did this, I did that, and met these people. I learned about these different things. Yeah. So that for me is really important. So I have a final question for you. Your mission is disruptive by design to help women build wealth on their own terms, take up space unapologetically, and to create businesses that feel as powerful as they look. So for the women who are listening, for the one who's still playing it small, or the one who's still waiting for permission, still wondering if she's too much or not enough, what do you want her to walk away today believing is possible for her? And what's a question that she can start with that can open up the doorway to everything?
So I would say the nugget of information I'm going to say is give yourself permission. Don't wait for anyone else. Just decide. Decide to be her. Decide to be her today. It doesn't matter what numbers in your bank account or what brand of clothes you're wearing, what car you're driving, if you have a car or not. Decide to be that wealthy version of yourself. Decide to be the healthy version of yourself. Decide to be the woman who walks into a room and commands it. Just decide, because you will start becoming her by just deciding. And the question that I would say to ask is really, what can I do today to be a little bit better than yesterday? And I think of this a lot with our habits and the ways that we let defeat and distractions come in. Are you saying, I don't have time to make that extra video. I didn't have time to reach out and make those connections, but you're scrolling on your phone or you're watching Netflix at night. Set aside some time. Look at how you're spending your day, track it just for a few days and just see what are your go-tos when you are feeling that you're shrinking, when you're like, oh, I'm uncomfortable reaching out. So I'm going to go do this thing instead. Once you are aware of those patterns, then you can start making different decisions. And that awareness is where the shift starts to happen. So just asking, how can I be better today? What's the one thing that I can do to push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone today that I didn't do yesterday?
Yeah, so important. And right, that where your focus goes, the energy flows, right? So,
Yeah.
so important to know that. Well, Stephanie, I have to say this conversation did not disappoint, not even one little bit. I knew it was going to be really great. What you brought today is not just strategy, and not just talking about systems, but you actually, I think, brought that permission slip for the woman who's been thinking about, oh, I want to do these things, but maybe has been kind of stopping herself. Maybe she's been judging herself, thinking, I can't do the things that I want, because maybe she needs to stop performing for other people, to stop shrinking herself, to stop building a business around what everyone else is saying it's supposed to look like, but she needs permission from someone to do it. And really, the person who can give her that permission is the one that's staring back at her in the mirror every day. And the fact that you've lived every single thing that you teach, that's what makes this land so differently for me. So I really am so appreciative of you. Thank you for your boldness, for your honesty, for showing up authentically you, exactly as you are. That in itself is a message of what this series is all about. So again, thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, if you would like to connect with Stephanie directly and learn more about the Growth Room, the Wealth Building Room, and her coaching programs, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, taking up space is not arrogance. It's not too much, and it's not something you have to earn or justify or apologize for. Taking up space is simply what happens when a woman finally decides that her voice, her vision, and her work are no longer up for debate. So here's your permission slip to stop waiting for the world to make room for you, because you were always allowed to walk in and claim your seat at the table. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, Stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.